Nancy Porter Steele is joining me from Halifax here in Canada, where she is a retired psychotherapist. And Nancy has a long-standing goal of helping people identify what they believe about themselves and how that relates to suffering, and to find ways to change it. And I reached out to Nancy to share her insights related to logosynthesis in a few areas. One, as a pioneer, she was one of the first ones to do training with Willem back when he discovered logosynthesis in 2005. And also as a healing professional with a deep interest in supporting others to reduce suffering, and as a lifelong learner. So thank you for joining me, Nancy.
Thank you, Kat.
So I usually start these conversations by asking people how they were first introduced to logosynthesis, but I'm curious about your career as an architect. So can you tell us a little bit about this?
I thought I would start with answering your one about architecture and what I liked about it with showing you a picture. That is the Pete Maravich Assembly Center for Louisiana State University. And that's a building that I was doing at the time when I first got together with Curtis, who is my husband, and the two of us are the ones who've done so much study of different things. And he was practicing psychotherapy as a psychiatrist. One of the things that we did early on was climb up through that building while a game was going on and get onto the catwalks up under the ceiling.
Wow.
And walk around and have a good time.
Wow, that is quite the building. How
Yeah.
long did that building take to construct?
Well, that building, we started working on the design about 1965, and it was finished in 1970 and opened at the end of 1970. A major project.
Wow.
Seats 15,000. And in getting ready for it, you asked the question about what I liked about the career. We did things like travel to see the seating available in the world and travel to see other buildings that were trying to accommodate the same kind of things. And contacted a marvelous, successful acoustic engineer. We had all sorts of complicated engineering in the building, but acoustically, it was wanted to be able to have a theater in the round as well as basketball. So wanted to have a really good sound. And he did such a good job that Bob Hope said it was the best venue he ever played in. So,
what a compliment.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So it was an interesting career. And I was still doing it while we got together. And Curtis and I would, when we were just starting to go together, would go to a lot of workshops that psychotherapists were doing to teach one another how they worked in groups. And I discovered that I liked that and I had a talent for it. So I went and got training at the Western Institute for Group and Family Therapy in Watsonville, California, with Bob and Mary Goulding. And what they were teaching was transactional analysis and redecision therapy, which is extraordinarily helpful methods to work with people. So immediately, I was able to start co-leading groups with Curtis and start to help teach this excellent method to other therapists. So I overlapped the two things. I was still doing architecture and teaching architectural design at Louisiana State University. And together we set up all sorts of groups and we brought in teachers of various kinds and we created a center for personal growth and training, and really had a remarkable, delightful time for the whole 1970s period.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, in some ways, it sounds like architecture and psychotherapy are completely different careers, right? But then on the other hand, if you think about bringing the team together to create a building like what you just showed us, it takes a team and there's so much interpersonal skill that's required in order to make those teams work efficiently and effectively. So you can start
to. It also is a matter that in doing the kind of work that we did with transactional analysis and redecision therapy, we're looking at the very complex aspects of people's psychology. And there's a great deal of complexity to architecture, which helps to train the mind to think in terms of all those complexities. So it's not so different in some ways.
Interesting. I find that very interesting, Nancy. Thank you. Yeah. And so I understand, like, you've trained in many healing modalities to relieve suffering, and your preferred models at present are transactional analysis and redecision therapy, emotional freedom techniques, EFT, and logosynthesis. And I know that Willem is trained in both transactional analysis and emotional freedom technique as well, and that his work, he developed logosynthesis with that understanding, with that knowledge. So this is kind of an evolution in some respects. Can you describe how logosynthesis complements those other two modalities?
Well, in respect to transactional analysis and redecision therapy, at the core of that work, we find those extremely important beliefs that people took on very early in life, sometimes before they could talk. They were collecting beliefs about who they were and what they could and couldn't do, and so forth. And so transactional analysis redecision therapy is good at pinpointing those and finding them. And the method that we learned for working with it back then in the 70s was to have the person stand or sit in the position of themselves as a child and of the grown-ups from whom they were getting the messages, and can't have a talk back and forth until they resolve the issue. Well, that works, but it's kind of tedious and doesn't always work well. Whereas with logosynthesis, once you find that belief, you can take care of it right away by changing the energies that have been there. And there's a difference because transactional analysis has assumed that we have ego states and that they have some sort of reality. But what we understand in logosynthesis is that ego states are energy forms, and they are not permanent. They are hanging around, but they can be eliminated or changed as much as we choose with logosynthesis. So it's very complementary in that respect. Now for EFT can do many of the things that logosynthesis does. It's just based on tapping, and tapping, you don't want to go around going this all the time.
Yeah.
Great for some things, but
yeah, and I think when I talk to people who have trained in both EFT and logosynthesis, a piece of it is the preciseness, I think, to which logosynthesis resolves those old beliefs and those old memories as energetic structures, and once you get that precision, then the relief tends to go with that as well. But yeah, back in the early days of transactional analysis, and for you to be able to see that evolution of it, and the more we learn, and that's what Willem often says, is we stand on the shoulders of giants, and there's a lot of learning out there, and how do we use that information to move forward. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, another thing about EFT with respect to logosynthesis is that EFT, being based on acupuncture, then acupressure, of course, has always worked with the physical. And logosynthesis has been working very little with the physical, but I do, because I'm old and I have all sorts of physical things going on. So I'm a guinea pig. I use logosynthesis on all kinds of things. For example, I can prevent a cold from developing with logosynthesis. I haven't had a cold since June of 2007. And the way I do it is I notice the first symptom that might be a cold coming on, and I apply logosynthesis to that symptom. The symptom is eliminated, the cold does not develop.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and I know like over the past year of the pandemic, we've been able to have a lot of online learning opportunities directly with Willem, and he does have a program, Logosynthesis and the Body. And yeah, if you start with the foundation of logosynthesis with what bothers you now, then whether it's a physical or an emotional distress, you can use that information to start to resolve it, right? So
Yes.
yeah.
So I've found that for those pains that can't be stopped with the various substances that I have found, I can stop them with logosynthesis.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, and it's all integrated as well, right? Like there's a reason why we have physiotherapists, there's a reason why we have medications, and there's a reason why we have logosynthesis, I think, as far as integrating them and improving our health and wellness. So, yeah. So I was introduced to Willem and logosynthesis in 2013, and I attended my first seminar with Willem in 2015. And it was an amazing experience to be part of the group in that training seminar. And you know, many of the people had been coming together since he started coming to Halifax in 2006. And I noticed curiosity and compassion and a great ability to hold space for newcomers. And I really enjoyed the feel of the community. And so I understand you were one of the drivers in bringing him to Halifax to do those trainings. And I'm just curious if you can tell us a little bit about why that was so important for you to make him come from Switzerland to Halifax and make this available to professionals.
well, let me start with telling you about how I connected with Willem in the first place. He was conducting an online discussion group about energy therapies, and that was in 2005. He, at that time, had just discovered that he could have energy moved by people speaking about it. And so he was sharing that online, and I was trying what he was doing with my clients and finding it helped. So when I was asked by the Dalhousie University Social Sciences social work department to recommend someone to come and teach, I thought, wow, here's an opportunity. This is something that is new and that will be useful for anyone who learns it. And so they asked him and he came. So that was the beginning of his coming. Now, Curtis and I at that time were the two of the leaders of a training institute. We had quite a number of therapists training with us. And so we were teaching whatever we could that would help them to do a good job. So that became part of it. So that's what was so important to me about it, was to use it in my own practice, but also to have it shared with all those good therapists that we were working with.
Yeah, and I'm still amazed at the number of people that I encounter here in Nova Scotia that, you know, they're working throughout the province or even across the Maritimes and internationally that had come, you know, back in those early days and have done the training and still continue to work with it. And so it's not, you know, there's not a lot of evidence-based research to support it yet. It's not a widely recognized therapy, but I am amazed that here in Nova Scotia, the number of people that have encountered it over the years and have found it to be very beneficial for them, both, you know, as a client and as a therapist. So, yeah.
Yes, that's excellent. And a lot of credit goes to Trish North, who was one of the people who went to Switzerland with us in 2007 to learn how to teach logosynthesis. And she has since taken on the job of being the focal point here in Nova Scotia and for much of North America, teaching and spreading the word. And, you know, we have Satinder Bala in India doing wonderful work with logosynthesis. We have people all over the world doing work with logosynthesis now. It works so well, you can't wait until research to go. It's just too good to wait. Furthermore, I think that we could teach it to children and children could use it. I think everybody can learn it.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. Although sometimes I think it's important for, you know, the teachers to learn it first so that we can have that container for the kids to learn it and
Yes.
stuff, right? And so it's getting that structure to roll it out. And yeah, but there's so much opportunity and potential for it. Yeah. So you're retired now. What does logosynthesis look like in your everyday life?
Well, for me, every day, it's mainly about dealing with little things like pains, because I've cleared up so much in my life with using everything that I learned on myself first and then on other people. There's just not much bothering me anymore. So, except for the physical. So I work with the physical, whatever that may be. And we live in a building where there are about 180 old people. And of course, a lot of them have different things going on. They don't talk about their psychological issues, at least not with me, and I doubt with each other either. But they do talk about their physical issues. And so when somebody brings up a physical issue, I usually offer logosynthesis. I can give you a couple of examples. A nurse moved in, retired nurse, and she was sitting at the dinner table with us one evening. And she said she couldn't pick up anything with her right hand because the ring finger on that hand hurt too much. So I gave her logosynthesis for that finger. The pain went away. She could pick things up. And she's been here for a few years now, and she still picks things up. I don't know whether she has to use logosynthesis every day or what, but she's picking
From what
things
we
up.
see is that you don't have to use it every day. Once you resolve the issue, it's resolved. And unfortunately, we don't have just one issue, but yeah.
Pains sometimes come back, so we can't be sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And another one is there is a woman who has a hair salon here in the building. And of course, right now we're all locked down, so she's not coming in. But when she's coming in, she had told me that she had pain in her big toe on the right foot. So I gave her logosynthesis for that. And for a hairdresser, always on her feet, that was very important. So she says, what did she say? Miracle maker or something like that.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, as we get older, then we tend to have more and more physical pains, right? And just something like a sore finger can really take away your joy in life if it's always there. So, yeah. So, in my book, Thriving in Our Times, From Reactions to Actions Using Logosynthesis, I highlight that we're all human. We all react to what's happening around us. And then, from this conversation, we talk a bit about the beliefs of ourselves and also some of those, those physical symptoms that we can experience. But the more that we kind of resolve what bothers us individually, the more we can be present for others, like in their everyday life. And I know, rather than being stuck in our patterns of reacting, we can have our energy available for us so that we can take more meaningful action. And can you talk a little bit about that from your background and your perspective?
Well, I think you've said the key point, which is if we don't take care of these issues promptly, then we aren't able to do our very best because too much of our energy is going into this internal distress, which is bothering us so much. So if we can let go of that, then we can just really do things fully aware of what we're doing and bringing all of our intelligence and abilities to that. And so the thing is, we have these methods now, logosynthesis being a prime one, that we can use to resolve things quickly. And it's important not to be stuck anymore. I would like to tell you about a wild idea that I have that might be something great sometime if it's not too wild. I read yesterday in the May 10th issue of the New Yorker about Dr. Michael Levin's work with using electricity to have cells regenerate. And he actually gets these little animals that he works with, and he has them regenerate a limb that has disappeared or something like that. And he had a paragraph in that article that said that the problem with cancer is that the cells have lost the ability to communicate with the other cells, and that's why they're cancerous. So I'm thinking, hey, maybe with logosynthesis, we can energize those cells as well as he could do it with electricity and get them to communicate
Yeah.
and have no cancer. And maybe we can regenerate some of our other cells that are getting so old and not working anymore. Who knows? All sorts of possibilities occur to me for logosynthesis. I wrote Dr. Levin about it, and I also wrote Willem Lammers about it, because I think that, you know, who knows, it might work.
Yeah, and what we notice with logosynthesis is once you kind of shift that paradigm to really, because logosynthesis is based on the understanding that we're life energy, that everything is energy, and that it's in flow or it's frozen and it belongs to us or it doesn't, but also that words have that power to shift energy. And so when you can target that and target those words, the philosophy that Willem has developed and the model to support healing and development is so powerful that I agree with you. There's a lot of opportunity. It's a matter of structuring it so that we can target the issue and move it forward.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah, and it's kind of giving the power back to ourselves instead of putting it into an electrical circuit, right? Like it's using our it's using our own internal power that we have.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So what would you have for a message for someone that's kind of maybe skeptical about the power of logosynthesis, skeptical about what's possible with logosynthesis?
Well, my message is it's working for a lot of people in a lot of ways. Give it a try. It can't do any harm. All it can do is help. And it certainly has proven to help a lot of people all around the world.
Thank you, Nancy. That's I certainly enjoyed learning from you. All the way from that building that you built as an architect, and through your work, you've contributed so much to the learning of healing self. And it's been a long career for you, and certainly a very impactful for career. So thank you for all you do in this community, and I appreciate your insights.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I appreciate your doing these programs for people.